In recorded history, only one plateau has been continuously inhabited for over 7,000 years, while sitting on top of geological forces, violent enough to reshape its surface every century. A landmass where the hottest temperature ever measured on Earth's surface, 70.7 degrees Celsius, 159 degrees Fahrenheit, was recorded not inside a volcano, but on a desert floor, where forests older than the last ice age still grow along a coastline that should not, by any climatic model, support them. Where entire villages have been carved into volcanic rock and continuously occupied for 3 millennia, without a single blueprint ever being drawn. This is Iran. Not the Iran of headlines, not the Iran of sanctions and summits. The Iran beneath, the geological Iran, the one built on salt domes and tectonic collisions, on underground rivers engineered before Rome existed, on deserts so extreme they were once classified as abiotic, meaning incapable of supporting life in any form. And yet, people live here. They have always lived here. And the ways they have learned to survive in landscapes that actively resist habitation contain engineering principles, ecological knowledge, and cultural adaptations that the modern world is only now beginning to understand it needs. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit subscribe, because what comes next, no travel documentary has ever shown you. All sources will be posted in the comments. Dasht-e Lut, the hottest surface on Earth. Located in southeastern Iran between the provinces of Kerman and South Khorasan, the Lut Desert, Dasht-e Lut, stretches across 20,000 square miles of terrain so extreme that NASA's MODIS satellite recorded the highest land surface temperature ever measured here, 70.7 degrees Celsius, 159.3 degrees Fahrenheit, in 2005. Not air temperature, surface temperature. The ground itself hot enough to cook organic matter on contact. The Lut was long classified as abiotic, a scientific designation meaning no life could survive. That classification has since been revised, but the correction itself reveals the scale of the environment. When scientists returned with more sensitive instruments, they found bacterial communities surviving inside rock varnish, insects adapted to feed on wind-blown organic debris, and foxes hunting at the desert's margins during the coldest hours of night. But the Lut's most visually extraordinary feature is not its heat. It is the calots, a field of wind-sculpted sand and rock formations called yardangs, stretching over 90 miles. These are not dunes. They are erosional remnants, carved over tens of thousands of years by the Shamal winds that tear through the basin at speeds exceeding 70 miles per hour. The result is a landscape of parallel ridges and troughs rising up to 500 feet, spaced with an almost architectural regularity that looks designed rather than geological. From above, the calots resemble a city. From the ground, they resemble the ruins of one. UNESCO inscribed the Lut Desert as a World Heritage Site in 2016, the first desert in Iran to receive that designation. Not for its beauty, though it possesses that, for its geological significance as a laboratory of aeolian processes, wind-shaping Earth on a scale visible from orbit. For the semi-nomadic communities on the desert's western fringe, the Lut is not a spectacle, it is a boundary. The Shahdad Oasis, one of the oldest continuously inhabited settlements on the plateau, has maintained date palm agriculture for over 4,000 years using a qanat system. Underground channels that tap mountain groundwater and deliver it across miles of desert without a single pump. Those qanats are now failing, not from disrepair, but from the same aquifer depletion affecting arid regions globally. the water table drops. The Qanat tunnels run dry. And a 4,000-year-old agricultural system begins to collapse not because the engineering was flawed, but because the resource it was designed to access is being consumed faster than geology can replace it. Places like the Lut remind us that the most extreme environments on Earth are not the most empty. They are the most precisely adapted, and the first to reveal when that adaptation is no longer enough. Write in the comments, have you ever experienced heat so intense that the landscape itself seemed to be alive? Druzdeus Badabi Surt. The terraces that grow themselves perched at 4,600 feet in the Alborz mountains of Mazandaran province. Badabi Surt is a series of stepped travertine terraces formed by two mineral hot springs over the past several thousand years. The deposits range from deep orange to pale yellow to cream white, depending on the mineral composition. Iron oxide for the reds, calcium carbonate for the whites, sulfur compounds for the yellows. The terraces look artificial. They are not. Each step is a natural dam formed by the slow precipitation of dissolved minerals as hot water flows downhill and cools. The process is ongoing. The terraces are still growing, still reshaping their own surface at a rate visible within a human lifetime. Badabi Surt is one of only a handful of travertine terrace systems in the world, Pamukkale in Turkey and Mammoth Hot Springs in Yellowstone being the most famous. But what makes the Iranian site geologically distinct is the dual spring system. The two springs have different mineral compositions, producing different colors and different terrace structures within meters of each other. A natural experiment in mineral deposition running side by side. For the village communities in the surrounding valleys, the springs have been used for centuries as therapeutic bathing sites. The water from the upper spring, rich in sulfur and salt, was traditionally applied to skin conditions. The lower spring, with higher iron content, was believed to treat joint inflammation. These are not folk tales. Modern analysis has confirmed mineral concentrations consistent with balneological therapy. The pressure Badabi Surt faces today is foot traffic. The terraces are fragile. Travertine is soft when freshly deposited. Walking on active surfaces disrupts the mineral crust, interrupts the flow channels, and can permanently alter the terrace structure. Increased domestic tourism since the site gained international attention has accelerated degradation in areas where visitor access is not controlled. A fence was erected, parts of it have been ignored. The terraces continue to grow, indifferent to the question of whether anyone will be careful enough to let them. Places like Badabi Surt remind us that the most beautiful geological processes are often the most fragile, and that the speed at which nature builds is rarely compatible with the speed at which tourism consumes. The Hyrcanian forests, older than the Ice Age. Stretching 500 miles along the southern coast of the Caspian Sea, from Azerbaijan to the border of Turkmenistan, the Hyrcanian forests are a relic of the Tertiary period, a continuous forest ecosystem that has survived for between 25 and 50 million years. They predate the last ice age. They predate the formation of the Sahara. They contain tree species that disappeared from the rest of Europe and Western Asia millions of years ago, but persisted here because the Alborz Mountains created a microclimate, trapping Caspian moisture on the northern slopes and maintaining humidity levels that the surrounding continental dryness could not erode. The result is a temperate rainforest in a country most people associate with desert. Canopy heights exceeding 130 feet. Over 3,200 plant species, 180 of them endemic. Persian ironwood trees, Paratia persica, whose autumn foliage shifts through red, orange, purple, and gold in patterns so complex that no two branches match. Caucasian zelkova, a species that once covered all of southern Europe, and now survives only here and in a handful of Georgian valleys. UNESCO inscribed the Hyrcanian forest as a World Heritage Site in 2019, recognizing them as one of the most important refugia on Earth, a place where ancient biodiversity survived global extinction events by virtue of geography alone. For the communities living within and at the edges of these forests, rice farmers, tea growers, silk producers, the Hyrcanian canopy is not heritage, it is infrastructure. The forest regulates the water cycle that feeds the paddy fields below. The leaf litter creates the soil that supports tea cultivation. The humidity maintained by the canopy is what makes silk production possible at this latitude. The pressure is deforestation, not industrial logging, that has been formally restricted, but incremental clearance for agriculture, road construction, and rural expansion. The forest edge retreats by small amounts each decade. Each retreat is individually minor. Collectively, over the past century, the Hyrcanian forests have lost an estimated 50% of their original extent. If you are watching for the first time, subscribe now. Because the next location is a village carved into stone that has been continuously inhabited for 3,000 years. And the reason it survives will change how you think about architecture. Places like the Hyrcanian forests remind us that the oldest living ecosystems are not always the ones that look ancient. Sometimes they look like the greenest, most alive places on Earth. And that is precisely what makes their loss invisible until it is irreversible. Maymand, the village. Inside the mountain. In the arid highlands of Kerman province, 230 miles northeast of Shiraz, an entire village has been carved into the soft volcanic tuff of a mountain slope. Maymand is not a ruin. It is home. Between 150 and 200 people still live here, in approximately 350 hand-carved rooms called quiches, connected by narrow stone passages that wind through the rock like a three-dimensional labyrinth. The settlement dates back at least 3,000 years. Some archaeological evidence suggests seasonal use extending back 12,000 years, making it one of the oldest continuously inhabited sites in Iran and among the oldest in the world. UNESCO inscribed Maymand as a World Heritage Site in 2015. The rooms are carved with hand tools. No mortar, no added structural support. The volcanic tuff is soft enough to excavate, but hard enough, once exposed to air, to form a stable shell. Inside, the temperature remains between 68 and 72 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. Naturally climate-controlled in a region where exterior temperatures swing between below freezing in winter and over 100 degrees Fahrenheit in summer. A passive thermal regulation system created 3,000 years ago that outperforms most modern insulation. The residents are primarily semi-nomadic pastoralists who move with their livestock to higher pastures in summer and return to the cave dwellings in winter. This transhumance cycle, the seasonal movement between fixed settlements, has been practiced here without interruption for millennia. The sheep provide wool, milk and meat. The caves provide shelter. The mountain provides water through springs that emerge from the volcanic rock. But the population is declining. Young people leave for Kerman, for Tehran, for cities where wages exist. The cave rooms, which require constant maintenance, small repairs to smoke vents, reshaping of worn thresholds, clearing of water channels, begin to deteriorate when unoccupied. A dwelling that has been maintained for 3,000 years through continuous habitation can collapse within a decade of abandonment. The UNESCO designation brought attention. It also brought a contradiction. The site's value is defined by its living community. Without residents, it becomes archaeology. With too many tourists, the infrastructure that supports residents, narrow paths, shared water sources, communal cooking spaces, becomes overwhelmed. Places like Maymand remind us that the most resilient architecture is not the most engineered. It is the most inhabited, and that the moment a community leaves, even stone begins to forget its shape. Mount Damavand, the volcano that sleeps lightly. Rising to 18,406 feet above the Alborz range, Mount Damavand is the highest peak in the Middle East, the highest volcano in Asia, and a stratovolcano that is not extinct, but dormant. Fumaroles, volcanic gas vents, still emit sulfurous steam near the summit. Hot springs heated by magmatic activity dot the lower slopes. The mountain is not finished, it is resting. In Persian mythology, Damavand is where the three-headed dragon Zahak was chained after his defeat by the hero Feridun. The mountain serves as the dragon's prison, and the occasional tremors and sulfurous emissions are Zahak struggling against his chains. It is a myth that encodes a geological truth. The mountain is alive, and the people who have lived in its shadow for millennia have always known it. The southern face of Damavand supports one of Iran's most important watersheds. Snowmelt from the summit feeds rivers that supply water to Tehran, a city of over 9 million people, located just 40 miles to the southwest. The mountain's glacial reserves, while small compared to the Himalayas, function as a seasonal water battery, storing precipitation as ice and releasing it as meltwater during the dry months when Tehran's demand peaks. Those glaciers are retreating. Measurements over the past 2 decades show consistent loss of ice mass on the northern and western faces. The snow line creeps higher each year. The meltwater season shortens. For Tehran, this is not an abstract climate statistic. It is a water supply timeline. The communities on Damavand's lower slopes, in villages like Rinne and Polor, maintain terraced agriculture fed by mountain streams. They grow walnuts, cherries, and barley at altitudes where the growing season is compressed into 4 months. The farming calendar is calibrated to the mountain's thermal rhythm. Planting after the last frost, harvesting before the first snow. As temperatures shift and snow melt, patterns change. That calibration drifts. Places like Damavand remind us that the most powerful geological features are not the most stable. They are the most consequential, and the communities that depend on them are often the last to be consulted when the mountain begins to change. Mahalou Lake, the lake that bleeds pink. 20 miles southeast of Shiraz, in the province of Fars, Mahalou Lake is a shallow endorheic salt lake that turns vivid pink during the dry months of late summer and early autumn. The color comes from Dunaliella salina, a halophilic microalgae that produces beta-carotene as a UV shield when salinity levels exceed the threshold that kills almost everything else. The more the lake shrinks, a visual paradox that has made Mahalou the more beautiful the most photographed natural sites the closer it is to ecological and one of the least understood. The lake has no outlet. Water enters through seasonal rivers, draining the Zagros foothills, and leaves only through evaporation. In wet years, the lake can cover 100 square miles. In dry years, it contracts to a fraction of that, leaving vast salt flats that catch the light like a mirror. The pink phenomenon is not decoration. It is a stress response. Dunaliella salina thrives precisely because nothing else can. When salinity exceeds 25%, the brine shrimp that once supported migratory flamingos begin to die. When salinity exceeds 30%, even the Artemia, salt-adapted crustaceans, cannot reproduce. What remains is a monoculture of extremophile algae painting the water a color that signals, in biological terms, a system approaching its limit. For the farming communities around Mahalou, the lake's contraction is measured in lost grazing land, increased dust storms from exposed salt flats, and salinization of shallow wells that once provided irrigation water. The same process affecting Lake Urmia in the northwest is playing out here on a smaller scale, with less international attention but identical mechanics. Upstream diversion, reduced rainfall, accelerated evaporation. Places like Masuleh remind us that beauty and collapse are not opposites. Sometimes they are the same process, viewed from different distances. Shiraz, the burnt city that holds the future. In the Sistan plain of southeastern Iran, on the banks of the now dry Helmand River Delta, lie the remains of a city that was founded around 3200 BC, thrived for over 1,000 years, and was abandoned around 1800 BC. Shiraz, the burnt city, was not destroyed by war. It was destroyed by water, specifically by the loss of it. At its peak, the city covered 370 acres and supported a population estimated between 5,000 and 40,000. The residents developed one of the earliest known systems of writing independent of Mesopotamia. They performed the oldest known brain surgery. A skull found at the site shows evidence of a craniotomy performed on a living patient who survived. They created the world's oldest known animation, a series of images painted on a ceramic goblet that, when spun, shows a goat leaping to eat leaves from a tree. Writing, surgery, animation, all invented independently in a city most people have never heard of, in a desert that now receives less than 2 inches of rainfall per year. The city burned 3 times, hence the name, and was rebuilt each time. But the 4th crisis was not fire, it was drought. The Helmand River, which had fed the Sistan wetlands and made the city possible, shifted course. The water disappeared, the city emptied. Within a generation, one of the most advanced urban centers of the Bronze Age became uninhabitable. Today, the Sistan Plain is one of the most water-stressed regions in Iran. The Helmand River, which originates in Afghanistan, is the subject of an ongoing transboundary water dispute. The Hamoon wetlands, once a vast seasonal lake system, have largely dried up. The same mechanism that ended Shiraz 3,800 years ago is operating again, with modern geopolitics replacing geological accident as the cause. UNESCO inscribed Shiraz as a World Heritage Site in 2014. What it preserves is not just the ruins of a city. It preserves the evidence that advanced civilization and environmental collapse have always been partners, and that the warning signs then as now were written in the behavior of water. Places like Shiraz remind us that the most sophisticated societies are not always the ones that survive. They are the ones that leave records precise enough for the next civilization to understand exactly what went wrong. Iran is not one landscape. It is a collision of landscapes. Deserts where the ground temperature exceeds anything measured anywhere else on Earth. Forests older than the Ice Age growing within 200 miles of those deserts. Volcanic mountains feeding water to a capital of 9 million. Salt lakes that turn pink as they die. Terraced cities carved into stone by people who never wrote a single plan down. And the ruins of civilizations that invented writing, surgery, and animation before losing the one resource that made all of it possible. The communities that live within these landscapes have understood something for millennia that the rest of the world is only now learning under pressure. That survival in extreme environments is not a problem to be solved once. It is a negotiation conducted every day, every season, every generation, with geology, with climate, with water, and with the knowledge that the ground beneath your feet has never promised to stay the same. By any modern standard of comfort or stability, these places should not function as they do, and yet they persist. Not through certainty, but through the accumulated intelligence of generations who had no choice but to understand exactly where they were living. As climate pressures dismantle the assumptions on which modern infrastructure was built, as aquifers drain, as glaciers retreat, as entire temperature regimes shift faster than adaptation can follow. These deserts and mountains and dying lakes begin to look less like peripheral anomalies and more like early documentation of a future arriving unevenly, but everywhere. What the Lut has known about survival at the edge of habitability, what the Hyrcanian forests have known about outlasting every extinction event except the current one, what Maiman has known about building shelter from nothing but stone and memory. These are no longer local knowledge. The story does not end here. This is where it was always going to begin. Iran is unbelievable. What year were you born, and which country are you watching from? Write it in the comments. Stay curious, stay grounded, and never underestimate a land that remembers everything. See you in the next one.